Moon Palace, Chapter 10. Yuan seemed forlorn as he stood by the bedroom door looking at his wife. He whispered her name several times and her eyes began to open. She was stunned to see him standing there and tried to speak to him, but her mouth could not utter a sound. Then she peered over his shoulder and saw a busy street with a lot of Chinese people walking and biking. She looked to him, with just her lips moving, and asked, "What are you doing here? Are you home already?" Yuan did not respond. He simply looked distraught. Then he opened his mouth, and a loud and familiar noise came out of him. The alarm clock went off, and she reached over to turn it off. It was 6 in the morning, and she slept for only 2 hours. She squeezed her eyes and blinked several times to try to get rid of the burning sensation. Now that the weather was getting cold, the air was getting dry. She turned on her side, and with one hand she gathered her comforter into a massive clump and hugged it. Not knowing there was going to be a drastic change of temperature overnight, she did not turn on the heat. She coughed several times and sank her face under the cover. Continuing her thoughts from last night, what should I do? Am I really going there today to find out? She lay flat on her back and stared at the ceiling. If she does work there, will she speak to me? Will she tell me exactly what is going on? If she tells me what I think I know, what am I going to do? Am I ready to let go of everything that he and I worked hard for? Am I ready to give him up? Suddenly, she felt she just dug a deeper hole for herself, and she was standing very close to falling in. She closed her eyes and grimaced. But what if this is all just my imagination? Maybe he was telling me the truth, that someone is asking for money. Maybe that woman just wanted to talk to him about a bill unpaid. Mei-Ling shook her head, feeling frustrated. Enough. I need to get out of the bed. Around 7:30, Mei-Ling sat in a bakery shop in Chinatown, waiting for Yin Yang Grocery to open. Before she sat there, she already drove by the warehouse around 7:15, and noticed the sign said open at 8. Then she drove around the residential area nearby and wondered if that woman was living in one of those places. And if she was, could Yuan have been seeing her at her place? Don't jump into conclusions, she told herself, but she could not help it. The hesitation that her husband gave her last night and the cold voice at the end was obviously that he was hiding something. Suddenly, a surge of heat surfaced within her face. Mei-Ling sat at one of the tables, drinking her coffee. She was the only one that was sitting there alone. There were several elderly couples staring at her and then whispering among themselves. Mei-Ling sensed they were talking about her, but tried not to notice. She got tired of looking down at her coffee cup and started to scan the room. Suddenly it occurred to her that she was the only one without gray hair. Apparently these were the early birds, gathering around with their morning chit-chat. So why was she doing there? She was not one of those birds. But if she could be a bird, who would needed to rest her wings before heading out to the storm? When the waitress came to ask her if she wanted anything else, Mei-Ling shook her head and saw the waitress gave her a strange look. Then she noticed some people started to wait in line to be seated. Mei-Ling reached into her purse, put a few dollars on the table, and left. She took a deep breath and thought soon she would find out. She strolled along the sidewalk, looking side to side, and saw people in stores turning on their lights and flip their open signs. One of the stores she passed caught her eyes. It was a gift shop filled with trinkets behind the glass window. Mei Ling immediately thought of Shu Ming. She pushed the door in, and a bell attached to the door handle chimed. "Good morning," an elderly lady with silver gray hair smiled at Mei Ling. "Welcome." "Hi, good morning." "Thank you," Mei Ling replied. "May I help you find something?" Mei Ling shook her head and smiled. "No, just looking." "Okay, let me know," she said cheerfully, and sat down behind the counter. Mei Ling looked at her watch and reminded herself that it was only 2 minutes ago since she looked at it. She cursed herself for being so anxious and was glad that she had something else to occupy it with in the meantime. But even then, she still kept looking at her watch, and by 5 minutes to 8, she burst out of the door. Yuan stood in front of the dresser drawer, putting on a golf shirt, and as he was putting on his jeans, he held his breath while zipping and buttoning his pants. Mei Ling noticed him and chuckled. "Why are you still wearing those old jeans? They have to be 15 years old." "They make me look fit," Yuan replied proudly. "Only because you put on that loose shirt which covers your gut," she laughed. "Hey, don't laugh. Mrs. Wang at the warehouse told me the other day that I could still be a catch if I wasn't married." "Still? Didn't I tell you?" "No, tell me what?" Yuan stopped for a moment, inhaled, and said, "While you and I was just living together, Mrs. Wang had tried to play matchmaker and found a girl from Hong Kong for me." "Really?" "Yeah." "Did you ask her to?" "No, of course not. My mother did." Mei Ling bit her lower lip. Appearing guilty, Yuan said, "I'm sorry. Maybe I shouldn't have told you." "No, it's okay. I'm glad you told me." Mei Ling gave her husband a quick smirk. "So, did you meet her?" "Of course not." "Why didn't you? Maybe she would have been better for you." Yuan sighed and sat down next to his wife and put his arm around her. He comforted her softly. "You are the only one for me," and kissed her on her forehead. In her car at the grocer's parking lot, Mei Ling pondered whether Yuan had been lying to her long before, and it just might happen that his mistress probably worked for the same woman that had found a girl for him in the past. Was it possible that Mrs. Wang was the one that introduced Yuan to this woman, despite the fact that she knew he was already married? Was Yuan's mother behind this as well? Mei Ling parked a distance away from the warehouse and saw a couple of people that looked like workers went inside the place. Mei Ling was not sure if she should go now. What if the woman would not be there? What if she does not even work there at all? Mei Ling began to bite her nails, something she had not done in a long time. She looked at her watch, and it said 1:15. She could not wait anymore. Her heart was pounding in her throat as she was entering the building. Mrs. Wang was the first to see her. "Hello, Mei Ling. Nice to see you again. You're back so soon?" "Hi, Mrs. Wang. Nice to see you too," Mei Ling replied nervously. "What do you need today?" "Actually, I am looking for someone." "Oh? Who are you looking for?" Mrs. Wang asked. "Do you have someone named Moy working here?" Mrs. Wang's eyebrow raised and hesitated before she replied. Yes, I do." "How do you know? How did you know?" By now, Mei Ling's heart was just about ready to jump out of her throat, and her head was dizzy. She answered as steady as she could. "She called my restaurant. and omitted the part that the woman was asking for a husband. Oh, really? Was it about billing? She's in charge of bookkeeping. I guess so, Mei-ling lied. I was not around when she called, and since I happened to be in the area, I thought I would stop by and find out. Oh, I see. Mrs. Wang turned and pointed at the rear end of the warehouse. You see that door back there? Yes. That's where the office is. Just go through that door and you will find her. This is it. She was about to confront her. Each step Mei-ling took felt like heavy as if concrete block were tied to both of her ankles. Mei-ling told herself, once she opened it, nothing may never be the same again. It was almost as if she was saying goodbye to her past. She twisted the doorknob and entered. The office was empty.